Can you all hear me? Mic's good? Great. Well, it's great to be here. This is my first conference that I'm speaking at for either cryptocurrency or as a political candidate. So I'm extremely glad that Dystopia Labs and ETHPDX were able to get me here. I declared 2 weeks ago, and they've been extremely helpful and supportive in getting everything set up. So this has been a wonderful surprise that I was able to be here and talk to all of you, given that this is also my hometown. I would like to take this and kind of do a split thing here, lead into my academic roots. I'm going to start off by giving a brief conversation, brief talk, and then I'm going to save some time at the end to go over any questions and answers that you all might have. But first of all, I have a question for you all. I have a bet going with my campaign manager. How do you pronounce ETH as the acronym? If it's ETH, please raise your hand. All right. And if it's ETH, please raise your hand. There you go. All right. Thank you for that. I did. Yes, thank you. All right. So, thank you for that. It is so great to be here in this room of people. You know, I've been involved in the cryptocurrency space for quite some time, but this is my first time being in a room of all these builders and developers. It is absolutely great to be here with people who are helping to build the future in terms of both the future of France, as it were, but also just Web3 and the infrastructure that we're dealing with. You know, right now, I think a lot of you agree that cryptocurrency is under a bit of an attack when it comes to regulations and government. Not just talking about the Chinese ban on Bitcoin, which actually did end up being positive for the hash rate distribution of Bitcoin overall, but with India's planning a similar ban or talking about it, and we just had that infrastructure bill that went through Congress and got the entire crypto community pretty riled up, which was funny because I was already building my candidacy at that time, and I had to keep quiet about it. But it was great seeing all of you very loudly on Twitter, both discussing the infrastructure bill and taking it apart, and also praising Ron Wyden, who happens to be a senator from Oregon. That was a great little time there. I think this group of people that we have in this room has a lot of potential, and I think cryptocurrency is really slated to be the future of a lot of different industries. I think, we talk about, say, banking the unbanked across the rest of the world who maybe don't have access to it, all the new technologies and infrastructure that we're building, say, high-yield savings accounts that actually are high yield as opposed to 0.5% or whatever you're all getting if you're like me with my actual traditional bank. We have other things that we're trying out with loaning and borrowing from like Aave or all those other ones. I'm going to leave Cream out of the talk for now. And we have, say, Pool Together, who's building a new sort of lossless lottery, savings account of that nature. All these things that we're building together are fantastic, amazing, and I'm really proud to be a part of it. But as you all know, we really need to defend this space that we're all building together. I would like to go ahead and talk about me for a little bit and my background. I've always been interested in the future of technology and science. When I was in school, I got my PhD in chemical engineering, where I researched renewable energy, fuel cells, climate change, stuff of that nature. I was also mining Bitcoin at that time on my Butterfly Labs Jalapeno ASIC, which I'm sure very few of you actually know who Butterfly Labs is, but that really does date me. I got one of the very few ASICs that they actually did ship out. It also came with a coffee mug, which I was very surprised by, because I definitely did not expect ceramic mug with my computer hardware. But yeah, I was mining in 2013, where I graduated with my PhD, came out to Oregon to work at Intel to help design the manufacturing process for all the future semiconductor processors. Been there for 7 years, and last year I actually went from being just an investor and advocate for cryptocurrency and became a developer. When Yearn launched in DeFi summer of last year, I was an active member on their boards, proposing various different strategies. But then I was approached by somebody who ended up being my partner in the ETH Online Hackathon, whichever. We ended up joining the hackathon, and we won the Yearn prize for that. And I've been a member of the Yearn community ever since, though I have taken a bit of a step back the last couple of months while I built out this new endeavor. I have now been a member of this campaign, obviously as the candidate for 2 weeks as we launched. But one thing that I'm learning as I'm transitioning into campaign life is really just how expensive it really is. It turns out that it's going to be about a couple $1 million in order to get to the general election and win the general election. It's really, while I have all of you in here in this room, that's fantastic, but the general electorate, I won't be able to reach via methods like this. They're not on Twitter. They're all pretty elderly folk. So if I'm going to reach them, I need to be, going door to door, sending out mailers, getting TV ads, and that is expensive. So I have found that once I launched this candidacy and I declared 2 weeks ago to the crypto community that the enthusiasm and support has been truly overwhelming. It's been incredibly great to see some of the big, greats like Andre, although I did actually have a direct line to him, retweet my announcement and put it out there. But it's going to take a lot more than retweets in order to get into Congress and defend cryptocurrency. That is part of why I'm here today, not just to have this conversation with you about the regulations that our industry is facing and how we need to approach that, but also, to be honest with you, a bit of a direct ask. If you all could donate to the campaign, I specifically do have BitPay link as well as an ActBlue link, and I would really, really appreciate it if you all could, put some of your money where crypto Twitter's mouth is and back it up and help to fight for this industry that we're a part of. Yeah, that does kind of take me directly to the question aspect. If anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer. If anyone has any other topics they'd like to talk about, by all means.
So you just mentioned your, I guess, voter audience are elderly.
Yes.
How do you persuade them with cryptocurrency in general? Like, what's your strategy there?
That's an excellent question. The answer is, I'm not sure if everyone heard that, but it's basically, how do I get the elderly folk to care about cryptocurrency? And the answer is, you don't necessarily. You educate them, you talk about it, but that's not my entire platform. I researched renewable energy in grad school. Climate change is a big deal for me. Having the actual background to understand where it's coming from, how to legislate effectively on that front. So I'm going to be speaking to them about the things that really matter to them, which is climate change, healthcare, social security, all those classic things that people do tend to care about outside of the crypto space.
To piggyback off that,
Please.
the renewable energy aspect, a lot of the conversation and discourse that we see is that it just eats it back to the environment. How do you persuade, no matter the age, that's not true? How do you educate that?
That crypto is not necessarily a giant bore that's drilling to the core of the planet and going to crack it in half.
Young folks have that argument. That's why a lot of them aren't jumping into the space.
It's absolutely true. This is the answer that I get asked pretty often, and I think the answer that I can give is that this is an emerging technology, that you have things like, say, proof of stake right now, which Ethereum's moving to, which is incredibly efficient. I was mining Peercoin back when it came out, for anyone who remembers that, which was the first proof of stake coin way back in the day. We have new technologies that are coming out, like proof of stake, layer 2, avalanche, other solutions that are incredibly energy efficient. We do also have proof of work in the Bitcoin blockchain, which is very energy intensive. I think the way that we can approach that is talking about the nascent technology, all the improvements that we've been making in such a short period of time, but also encourage and incentivize renewable energy use when it comes to mining. Oregon and Washington have a huge amount of renewable energy, and if we can incentivize that use, that's why Facebook has giant server farms out here, is because power is pretty cheap and it's all hydro for the most part. So I think we should really be focusing on that as well to help steer the conversation away from Bitcoin eats all of our coal to incentivizing other methodologies to both mine and secure the consensus of the blockchain and move and transition to a renewable future.
I guess kind of the inverse of that question is, how do you start convincing some of the more maybe libertarian-minded crypto folks to give a shit about politics in general instead of just building past it and letting people catch up in the regulatory industry?
Honestly, I'm working on that right now. I'm working on finding the solution to that. It's really funny. There's been a lot of people who have been extremely vocal about needing to get involved in politics, and then I reach out to them and suddenly they smoke bomb and run away once they're asked to actually, back up their hot air. I think the answer to that is, while people have been, in the crypto space and in the libertarian space, in particular in the crypto space, people aren't just apolitical, they're proudly apolitical, like intentionally happy that they're not a part of politics. But as we found out this year, crypto is political, inherently. We're building an entirely new system of finance, of identity online, Web3, and we've got people in Congress right now who are making up nonsense laws for no good reason, who don't know what they're regulating. And that means we need people in Congress who do understand enough about what they're regulating in order to actually make smart regulations. I mean, regulations are always inevitable in everything that we do. You know, unless you really want lead back in your beer, you need regulations to protect consumers. The trick is to not over-regulate, to not smother the baby in its crib, as it were. This industry is very new, very young, and evolving way more rapidly than I think anyone could have ever expected. I think the answer to that is that we need to tell people and make them aware that the fight for crypto is inherently a political fight. All right, that's a great question. I don't know if you're mic'd, so I'm going to have to repeat some of these questions for other folks. The question was, what district? That's Oregon 6, the brand new one that we got in the 2020 census. Yep, that's the district that I'm running for. It's an open seat, so we're expecting to be pretty... There's going to be a lot of interest about it from both sides of the aisle. That will be fun. Already enjoying that. But the other aspect is, how do I reach across the aisle or reach the people in Congress already who do not necessarily know enough about it? The issue there, I think, comes from a few different folds. One, it's about getting people there who actually do understand it. By getting somebody in Congress, you can have a voice from inside the House as opposed to from outside of it. Like, it's the lobbyist versus the member of Congress sort of thing. Having the person in the room on the committees makes a big difference, because now they're actually a voice that they have to listen to, at least somewhat. You've already got a foot in the door. The second aspect is, I mean, a lot of politics is advocacy behind closed doors. Like, you don't necessarily see people on the floor of the House making all these arguments in real time. A lot of it's, you know, meetings between two members of Congress over coffee or a beer or something. And I think that's really where it matters to reach these people. The thing is, with crypto, it's such a big tent. It's such a broad thing. You have libertarians on one side, staunch, you know, freedom of money sort of thing, get the government out of my wallet. And you have people on the other side trying to build universal basic income using a blockchain. That is a huge range of philosophies. I'm really excited about that huge range. It means we get a lot of people to the table to talk about various ways that we can solve these issues. I think that's part of it. I really think you need to have this discussion that it's a technology. What matters is how the technology is used. The same technology that sent astronauts to the moon is the same technology that can deliver bombs halfway across the world. It's how it's used, and that matters completely. So for the Democrats, arguing along things such as, say, banking the unbanked, giving people more control over their own money, giving the general people access to the same financial tools that the powerful banks have had for decades, but now we all in this room have, assuming you can pay for the gas fees, have access to those exact same tools right now. I think that's how I'm going to be able to persuade the members of my party to come to the table and regulate this. I mean, I'll just start off by saying, once again, Ron Wyden is a senator from Oregon, a Democratic senator, and he fought hard. He may not have understood exactly what he was talking about, but the thing is, he listened, and that's what we need to find. We need to find allies who are going to listen to us, that we can talk to.
Will you be advocating for like a blockchain-based voting system? Is that something that you're interested in?
Blockchain-based voting system. I think there's a lot of promise there. My personal belief is that our voting system right now is already overly complicated. We have all these various voting systems, all these electronic voting systems that are easily, people don't have faith in them necessarily. So having a blockchain-based system, you can have a record of that. but I'm not sure if we're going to have people who have faith in that system quite yet. I would be very interested in looking into it. I'd be very interested in seeing how people would make up these solutions. But my first point of priority is to make sure that we have paper backups for all of our ballots, so there is a traceable system that is irrefutable, and that we have people guaranteed access to the ballot, as opposed to trying to restrict people's rights to vote by, say in Texas, where there was the vote by mail during the pandemic, but there's only one ballot box that happened to be like hours outside of Houston. That was the only drop-off. I mean, there's pretty obvious and intentional ways people are trying to suppress the vote. So I think we need to attack those big problems, and then we can start looking into blockchain-based voting solutions. But it is definitely something that has a lot of promise.
What are you thinking about in terms of how do you want to operate your campaign, and then also as a candidate, in terms of being maybe more like Intel, kind of a hierarchy, versus more like Yearn in a more centralized way?
That's a great point. The question was, how do I want to view my candidacy and my campaign in terms of top-down, like hierarchical structure, like a traditional organization, like a corporation, or more flat and back and forth? I mean, at this point, you can talk to my campaign manager, Robin, who very frequently argues with me about things that I should or should not be doing. And I take his advice about 90% of the time, and about 10% I push back. I think that's the way that I'm going to approach this. I have people who are professionals in the space who have been working in this area for a long time, and I need their true, honest advice. I don't think a top-down approach really helps anybody. I mean, at the end of the day, people just kind of want to be listened to and feel like they're heard.
Yeah, so I think, like, how do you, assuming you're in, how do you say, like, a Yearn or a maker isn't a security?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, say that again?
Like, assuming you're in, how do you say, like, a Yearn or a maker isn't a security? How do you know, like, what?
That's a great question.
What would you push for?
That's a great question. I think the answer there is that right now we have people who don't understand that, say, an Ether is not the same thing as a Uniswap token. They're vastly different use cases, and they need to be regulated as vastly different use cases. DAI is not the same as Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is not the same as, I don't know, what's another centralized-ish platform that released a token within the last year or two. There's plenty of them. Yeah. All of these various things are widely different use. I think when we're dealing with like shares of a token, is it airdropped? Is it an ICO? Those are very different use cases. How is it used? Is it used as voting? Is it used as revenue share? Is it just a completely sort of stablecoin token? And there's some tokens right now that don't actually have any use case at the moment. They say they're going to build them out, but they don't have them there quite yet. I'm sure everyone has a few ideas in mind. Those all need to be treated differently. Just inherently, they need to be treated differently. I think if you have a company that intentionally tries to, you know, they've got VC backing, they've got traditional backing, and then they try to pre-sell a token that has voting rights over an actual established, you know, LLC company, that's security. I mean, there's no way you can argue that that isn't a security, really. But we're talking about DAI or USDC, or we're talking about, I mean, just any sort of use token like Ether or Bitcoin, which is a proof of, you know, is an actual just random, it's a store of value, theoretically. Those aren't securities. They can't be. So treating them the same way just doesn't make sense. And that's exactly why we need people in there, already in the House, in Congress, who do understand that distinction.
How feasible do you think it is to even attempt to regulate this ecosystem when basically anybody who can write code can create a new protocol or create a new smart contract? It just seems like the velocity of the technology is going to continue to exponentially outpace the ability to regulate. So how do you address that?
Question is, how do you address regulation when things are evolving so rapidly? And you know, that's part of why you need people who actually understand it already inside. It will need to be addressed on a continuing basis, like all things really are. And you're correct that anyone can drop a smart contract if they're pseudonym or anon and they're using a VPN based out of Singapore or something. you can't track them. And the United States does not necessarily have, jurisdiction over somebody out of the country or somebody who's dropping a smart contract and then just walking away. The matter comes, I think, where we need to pay attention is when there's either clear predatory behavior, such as one of the very many different Ponzi schemes, like the true Ponzi schemes like BitConnect, not the everything else people are talking about like Ohm, and the sort of things that just are very clearly securities for American-based companies. If you're filed in Delaware and you're dropping a security, you gotta comply with the SEC. It's just, if you want all the protections of being an American company, you gotta follow the same rules. But no, I think when we're talking about the Luna devs who got served at Masari, that's different. They're clearly not American. If they hang out over there overseas, it's gonna be difficult to regulate. And if you're talking about, say, Pseudonon Yearn devs, good luck finding them. I know a few of them. I don't actually know all of their names. Some of them I've met in person, but still remain Pseudonon, so I don't know their name. Yeah, I think that's the distinction. It really has to come down to starting with A, where's the harm? And if there's clear harm being done, you gotta go after that first. B, if there is not necessarily harm, just make sure that they're following the rules if they want to be treated the same as, say, Intel or Microsoft. Does that?
Yeah, it just sounds like that approach is going to potentially just push innovation out of the United States because the tendency to want to over-regulate or
Right.
to be more preventative than necessary. But
I hear you, and I definitely think that overregulation is a thing that we really need to address, and we really need to hold off on doing that. When Uni dropped their token in a fair farming sort of situation, that is not necessarily the same thing as a pre-sale or an IPO or ICO. That needs to be addressed in a different way than like the ICOs of the 2017 era. And you're right, too much regulation will push things offshore, but at the end of the day, this is the wealthiest country on earth at the moment. Hopefully, we stay that way. If you want to do business in the United States and do business in this largest market in the world, there are regulations you have to follow to make sure that you're not hurting people. I think the trick there is going after the clear predators first, and then we can worry about the side effects. It's kind of like the Obama administration's rules about targeting cannabis use. They kind of didn't mess with it until it was somebody who was like clearly smuggling it across the borders or having a big drug rink or some clear and present harm. I think that's the solution here. To hands off at the moment, but go in when necessary.
How do you identify the differences between a predator and somebody that's using financial incentives to drive adoption?
Did they rug pull? Did they rug pull? No, that's my point. If they're clearly doing something like a rug pull, if there's a coded backdoor in the program so that the Genesis contract can infinitely mint or can do any of those tricks, that's clear predatory behavior. Outside of that, that is difficult to ascertain. I think you really need to go into it with an eye of intent. First, look at, did they intend to rug pull? Did they intend to steal money and then run away into the night? Go after them first. Did they have good intentions but maybe ran afoul of one or two laws? Still have to go after them, but intent matters in criminal justice a lot for a lot of different things. So I really think that's the key there is, once again, first target the people who are intentionally and knowingly doing harm.
It sounds more like hindsight, though, right? So,
Right.
like as a blockchain developer, you're constantly trying to promote your project as, gather a bigger audience and grow your base. But you also need to use those incentives for people who view the token like a business for like mining and things like that. But if you're out there saying it's going to be, worth something so big, then suddenly you're a target, right?
Yeah, declaring that your token does have intrinsic value, that it will be worth something someday, that it is inherently going to go up in value, that is just, don't say that. At the end of the day, don't promise something you can't deliver on. There's always talk about how, our company's gonna do great, we have a lot of faith in our growth, we're gonna be delivering these sorts of quarterlies. But there's a difference between that and saying, here's a Beanie Baby, I promise you in 10 years it's gonna be worth $1 million, bye. And I think that's the thing, is you're correct that it is sort of retroactive looking, but I mean, most criminal justice by definition is retroactive. Someone has to cross the line before you can go after them. And I think that's exactly what we need to talk about when we're dealing with the cryptocurrency space. There are a lot of areas that you can craft smart regulation, you can put out these guidelines for companies to follow, and you just have to go forward with that. And I think that's the difference, is we need people who are writing these laws and writing these regulations who understand what it's like currently in the industry when you're trying to, say, incentivize liquidity into an L2 pool. That's not the same thing. That's not dropping a token, that's not selling a security, that's incentivizing mining. And that is vastly inherently different than an ICO of the 2017 era. So I think we need to treat those as two very separate things.
Can you talk a little bit about the interaction between, or your views on the interaction between smart contracts, like code is law, and the actual legal system?
Oh boy. That question was asking me to take a stance on code is law versus intentional exploits. Is that fair?
Not necessarily. I mean, it is a broad question. It's about how, you know, smart contracts can or cannot interact with the legal system. You can
Okay.
talk about intentional, about exploits if you want.
Okay, so you're not asking about exploits and is code law after the exploit's done if it was already programmed? That's not your question?
Not specifically.
Okay, good. That's a very tricky subject. You know, for example, some contracts may set up something that's not a clear exploit, but if like they're streaming released tokens over a period of like a couple of weeks, but it's a constant stream, you can have somebody set up an arb bot intentionally to try to maximize on that arbitration. Is that an exploit? Is that code is law? Are we talking about a hack that's very clearly built into the code that they made a mistake that you can just siphon the funds away? Is that code is law, or is that like leaving your door unlocked and someone comes in and takes all your stuff? It's a really tough question and a really difficult thing to interact with. I think at the end of the day, when it comes to code on the internet, it's code on the internet. People are choosing to interact with it, or they're choosing to not interact with it on a daily basis. Right now, you kind of have to go out of your way to find smart contracts, and you have to have a lot of knowledge in order to actually use them if you're like logging into Etherscan, or even if you're just using like Brownie and using a terminal. I think that aspect is different than what we're dealing with when we talk about like BitConnect previously, where it was very clearly a Ponzi. Or when you have something that's very clearly a hole in the code that somebody finds out and is able to run away with $130 million, was that the most recent estimate for the Cream hack? I think that's the issue. So once again, I think it comes back to intent and harm done. Is there notable harm done to people? Did you just steal a lot of people's retirement, a lot of people's money? Was it an intentional exploit? Then that was a crime. You just kind of walked into the unlocked door and took a bunch of people's stuff. Is it something that was clearly a mistake in the code but isn't exploitable, that does harm to other people? Then it's someone made a mistake and there's no harm done, so there's nothing to go after.
Yeah, I guess to follow up, do you see smart contracts as having like the same legal status as real contracts? Like,
Eventually,
are you
yeah.
interested in helping bridge that gap, or is that maybe something further down the line?
I think eventually I do want them to have that same sort of, aspect. I think it's way too nascent to say that someone's mortgage contract is the same as a staking pool for Ohm at the moment. I mean, they're just two. One is established law over decades, and the other one is people trying a bunch of new stuff and seeing if it sticks, seeing if it works. So I think at the moment, we can't take these smart contracts and view them in the same sort of ironclad law as regular contract law. However, at the same point, regular contract law, you can still write a contract that's unenforceable. So you can write a contract that the law goes, yeah, no, this is bunk, and just throws it out and rules on it anyways. So eventually, yeah, I think we'll be there. Right now, I don't think we are. And I will push forward once we get more time to kind of work out our own kinks.
I don't need to get barred by the bar association yet.
No, I don't think you need to get a bar association license at the moment. No, much in the same way that a programmer who codes for, say, Outlook doesn't need to have a bar association for that. You just interaction between two different programs. That's what a smart contract is at the end of the day. It's a program that people can interact with that runs an executable that either forwards it to another contract or runs the software.
What do you think is the most important initiative that you'd be tackling first about?
Did you say specifically about the crypto community?
Sure.
Oh, because first of all, climate change. I mean, I'm sorry, but if we don't stop the planet from going on fire, we're all going to die. So I definitely am going to tackle that first. Given my background in it, given just the imminent nature of, like, people like to talk about climate change is coming. Nah, if you live in Portland, you know for a fact it's already here. Like this last summer with the heat dome, 116 degrees. Summer before that, the wildfires where we could basically not breathe outside. I was a long COVID patient, and having that thick smoke was incredibly hard for me. Climate change, number one. I can worry about smart contracts and Ethereum and stuff like that once I tackle the thing that's going to kill everybody on the planet. Priorities.
Just for those who arrived late, can you remind us of your name and how we can follow and connect with you?
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
My campaign manager, I know right now, is thanking you deeply for asking that question. Yep. My name is Matt West, Oregon 6th candidate for Congress, and my website is Matt West for Congress. If you go there, you can find the issues page, you can find the donate button on ActBlue or on BitPay, should you choose to. I will note that BitPay currently has an issue. If you want to donate over $3,000, they ask you for a lot of KYC. I'm pushing back on that. I just got put in touch with their head legal person, but apparently there's chatter about that. Yeah, but I mean, the maximum somebody can give is $5,800. So we actually have had people who are like trying to donate the max and then saw all the KYC and then ran away, which is the exact opposite of what we want. So that's where you can find me. That's where you can find all my issues, and that's how you can help support the campaign.
And for FOR or the number?
FOR. Thank you. .com. MattWest4Congress.com.